We've now come to my favorite season of recording videos, daylight saving time, which means that I just gonna have shit videos for the next 3 months until I can figure out better lighting. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today our movie in the middle is Heretic. Heretic follows two young missionaries whose fates are tested as they try to escape the house of a clever and malicious skeptic. It stars Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East, Hugh Grant, and a very fun cameo I'm not going to spoil. So this is one of those second half of the year pop-out movies that I was like, whoa, I had no idea we were getting this. And as soon as I saw the trailer, I was like, I really hope this isn't coming out in September or October because I really want to review this. It seems like it's going to be a really cool premise. And I don't want it to run into any of the other movies I already have to do. And luckily, it came out in November, so I was able to actually go see it and do a full review on it. And I'm super excited about it because I got a lot of thoughts on this one. Starting off with the highs, the shots and camera work in this movie are so good, particularly in the first half of the movie. I mean, the whole thing is just beautifully shot. I mean, there was one where I sat there and went, God, I want this framed. But in the beginning of the movie, maybe like the first third or even half of the movie, I would say, the shot choices are incredibly important because it's mostly conversation and all these little nuances and these subtexts going on in the conversation and underneath and what everybody's thinking without really saying it. And all of the shots are perfect in conveying what needs to be conveyed for this really long conversation scene. But of course, it's not just the shots that convey everything in the scene and makes it as powerful as it is the acting, which is just phenomenal here. Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East are so good in this movie. I love the characters that they play. They are kind of two sides of the same coin. You know, they're both missionaries, they both have their faith, but you can tell that one is a little bit more upbeat about it, more devoted, more passionate about it in a very like outspoken way, if not a little bit naive. And then the other one, you can tell, is just as passionate and thinks about it a lot more on the inside. You know, she's very, like, ruminating about everything. She has a little bit of a darker past, a lot of secrets. So I like that they were kind of, you know, two sides of this same religion. And they did just such a good job. I mean, the fact that for, like, at least a solid 10, 15 minutes of this movie, they just had to stand there and react, and I'm not joking when I say just stand there and react to things happening, and I was still so engaged. Sophie Thatcher has a look that could kill. Her eyes, her whole face can just convey terror, fury, whatever it is. They were both just so good. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that the most outstanding performance in this movie is Hugh Grant, which I would never have thought I would be saying, because before maybe 2 years ago, like Dungeons and Dragons, every time I heard Hugh Grant's in a movie, I thought, this is going to be the most boring movie I've ever seen. Because he's always been in those kind of polished British movies, you know, or maybe a lot of rom-coms. And recently he's been taking on just a lot of like just weird random roles, and a lot of villains at that. And this one, I think, was a really perfect mix between the two because he had to be sort of polished and very formal about things, but he could also have fun with it, and he could be kind of malicious about certain things. There's like some dark comedy in this movie where he says or does something, and he's just being awful. But the way he says it, you know, he's got that kind of, I didn't know you wanted to do like that. He's so good, and he's got so much to say, literally, quite literally so much to say in this movie. There's so much dialogue that he has in this movie, but I couldn't take my eyes off of him. I mean, yes, it's Hugh Grant, so who can't? But I mean, in terms of the story, he stole every scene. And then obviously just this premise is very cool. There's not much that's revealed in the trailer, obviously, for good reason, because you don't want to know what's behind these doors. But the premise being that they have to choose between belief and disbelief and kind of put their faith to the test, and they may be studied, observed based on what they do. And the entire thing is just him trying to prove a point in the most visceral way. It was just fascinating because every time I thought, this is what his point is, this is what his point is, it changes. And after a certain point, you're like, okay, this isn't it. We're not going to know until the end what his point is. But you're just so curious. And the way that they build it up in the first, again, third to even half this movie is just phenomenal. Because most religious horror movies are more often than not about the supernatural side of things, exorcisms, demons, heaven, hell, things like that. This one is so much more grounded. It's so much more real world, and the conflict's not between the big entities, but just between the people, which was really cool. And of course, they have a lot of scares in this movie, but it's scares on every type of level. There's, obviously some genuine just like jump scares and shocks and things like that. I'm so annoyed that out of all the things in this movie that could have scared me, one was a freaking spider. But they have those things, but a lot of it is more situational. Stress, tension, suspense. But then there's a third layer of scares, which is existential dread. Because obviously, this movie's about religion. And whether or not you're religious, there's a lot to think about here. And if you are religious, I don't know, it gets you thinking about some stuff. It was pretty like, that's a good point. This is the kind of screenplay where you can't really make stuff up to make the plot happen. The stuff that you're saying kind of has to sort of be true, which then is like, well, if it's true in the movie, is it true out here too? And generally, I do think the use of religion here was very well handled, because obviously religion in general, but specifically Christianity, is not popular at the moment, and understandably so in a couple different ways. And I think if there's a religion that is poked at more than Catholicism at this point, it's probably Mormonism, which is probably why they chose this one.
Joseph Smith was called a prophet. Dum 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 dum.
I think that they still did it really well because they point out those things, but the main characters, which we want to root for and follow, are these missionaries. And the antagonist, the villain of this movie, is the one who is the skeptic, the one putting them through all of this. And it's very interesting because it's kind of sort of anti what's been going on in media recently with religion. And yet it works. It's really interesting, and I think they did it really well, where kind of you can see both sides at certain points. And I like the arc and the message by the end that they have, where they basically come to this certain conclusion, and it's not like a one answer conclusion. It makes you think a little bit, and it sort of like touches in both sides. It was very interesting and very well done. My only middle for the movie is, in fact, the middle of the movie, because once you get behind the doors, then comes this problem with every movie that has this big build up to what's X in the movie, and this imagination goes wild, what's going to happen. It's so hard to live up to those expectations. So, I never want to give any movie like a low specifically for like it didn't meet my expectation of what was going to happen, because like you're building it up. What's it going to be? The thing about the middle of the movie that for me is a middle, it gets a little confusing. That's where I think the narrative, the themes, everything gets a little bit muddled. And this is something that I'm making it a middle because I think on a second time around, knowing what's happening, I can pay attention to all these little things a little bit more and kind of maybe piece together what was going on or what was intended. But it just seemed for me, as soon as they got through the doors, the movie dropped just a little bit because I was confused both narratively a tiny bit again and also thematically, in terms of what Hugh Grant was trying to convey, this character was trying to convey, why he was doing the things he was doing. It got a little bit muddled for me. I can't say I came out super clear. But then in the third act of the movie, obviously you get a kind of clear ending, an answer. And it was one that I was kind of expecting they were going to go, but I wasn't quite sure. And it was still a really cool ride after that. It's just that middle part I wasn't quite sure about. And for my low, really it just has to do with the main two characters. It kind of felt like the movie was setting up for these characters to, I don't even want to say do a little bit more, but that we were going to learn more about them. We definitely learned some stuff about each of them. They definitely have arcs and things happen to them. It felt like they were going to make everything that happened to them more about their decisions at the end, if that makes sense. It kind of feels like most of the movie is things happening to them and not a lot of them doing things. I thought they were going to set it up where by the end, they were going to have to make specific decisions. they were maybe going to be divided. They were going to be, again, because they're two opposites of the same coin, they were going to maybe go into two separate perspectives. I wasn't really sure. It didn't quite do that. So I was a little disappointed in that respect because it felt like they were setting up for that. So overall, I really, really did like this movie a lot. And any nitpicks I have and any lows that I have are really annoying because I want this movie to go above and beyond. The whole time I kept thinking, I just have this gut feeling that not only is it not a perfect movie, but I can tell exactly where it dropped off for me. And that bothers me because I really like this movie. The first half is perfect. It's just flawless. Like every little thing in the script that they set up was great. I love the conversations, everything. It's when they get into the answers and the actions and things that happen that I was like a little bit confused. But again, I'm going to give that a second watch to really determine what I think about it and give it the benefit of the doubt this time around, because now that I know what's going on, I can probably pay attention to some more things and kind of figure out maybe where it was that I was getting lost, because I really think that this movie could be not only just meeting expectations, but exceeding them. I really think it could. So I'm hoping it does that. For now, I'm going to definitely give it the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to give Heretic a 3.5 out of 4. You might say I have faith in my second viewing of this movie. Well, guys, let me know what you thought of Heretic. We don't have to have like a huge, terribly controversial religious discussion in the comments, but let me know what you thought of it, as whatever faith you are, or if you have faith or not. This is a really thought-provoking movie, and I'm definitely excited to watch it again, and I'm very curious what other people think of it, because it's been very, very well received. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.